I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to listen to this great lady tell us about her life and growing up in the Cleveland area. This is, I guess it would be my great aunt. She was a sister to my grandmother. And the way we're going to do this tonight, I'm going to ask her some questions along and then let her talk about it. But anytime that any of y'all have any questions or whatever that you want to ask her, just raise your hand and she'll try to answer them. But to introduce her, I just want you to look at her. She is 98 years young. And this is, we always refer to her as Aunt Lois Kinser Willis. And she was, we'll talk about this a little later on. The other day I went down to talk to her. She said, I'm number 12. And what she's referring to, there was 15 of these kids and she was the 12th one. So this is number 12 sitting next to me today. To start off with, Aunt Lois, I just want you to tell them your birthday and when you were born, and we'll start with that, okay?
Okay. I was born 12/7/18.
12/7/18, Pearl Harbor Day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You're a Pearl Harbor baby. So she was born in 19 and 18, December, did you say the 7th? So she's been around for a while.
I get your seat.
Yeah.
Don't
Oh,
forgive me.
you want
No, we don't need to bring a couple of the pictures. This was Pappy Kinser, her dad, right here, and we'll pass that around, or you can come by and look at it. And this is her mother, Mammy, and what was her real name? What was her full?
Mary Alice.
Mary-
Well, one of his name.
Mary Alice Johnson Kinser. So Mary Alice, I guess you was
She got it.
named after her. And this baby that they're holding, who is that? You think that was
I don't know for sure. It might be Conard or it might be.
Willie? You think it?
No, it wouldn't be Willie.
Okay, but you think it might be Connor?
It
One of
might be maybe Conard or Christian.
okay, one of those two.
But I don't know
For sure what it was. Now, what we're going to do is sort of go through here and just let her talk a little bit. I'm going to ask her questions. Adolphus Kinser. Okay. Did he have any brothers or sisters?
He had, as far as I know, he had, one brother and 4 sisters.
One brother and 4 sisters. Do you remember the brother's name by any chance?
Yeah, Clint.
Clay Kinser.
Yeah, and the women were Annie, Paradine, Caroline. Maybe I got one. There's another one, I think, but I can't
Yeah.
remember.
Were they raised around the Cleveland area, or were they Pappy Kinser? Was his people around the Cleveland area, or where were they from?
They were kind of over around Oak Hill, I think, because Aunt Tib and Uncle Charlie lived down there, and my aunt Caroline and Paradine, they're buried there too.
Yeah. I went to that cemetery not too long ago, and up by the old church, there is a tombstone there that looks like a tree stump, and it had there Christopher Columbus Kinser, and then there, I think that was his wife, and then a child buried there. Is that where his dad?
And that's my grandfather and grandmother, and there's my little brother.
Your little brother was buried there along with your grandfather and grandmother?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how many kids did Pappy and Mammy have?
15.
15. Okay. Now, I have written these down, and I think maybe I have them in order. If not, you can correct me, okay?
I can name them.
All right, can you name them?
I think so.
All right, go ahead then.
Okay, Gertie, Carl, John, Grace, Myrtle, Mildred, Lane, Paul, and Christopher.
Right.
In between Connor, Howard, Lois,
Yeah.
Willie, H.E., and Lita.
That's all, that was in order. Pretty good. Now, which one was the favorite out of that bunch? Was it number 12? Number 12 wasn't the favorite?
No, I don't think so. We were all favorites. So his mother died when we were young, and he was a good daddy and gave us lots of love.
Yeah. You was talking about Pappy Kinser. What kind of business was Pappy Kinser in?
He was in the timber business.
He was in the timber business, yeah.
He worked for a tie and timber company, a Wyoming tie and timber company, and then later in the years he worked through farms and told people how much they could make off selling their farms.
Right.
Their timber, and then he, of course, he farmed later.
Right.
Several years. Yeah.
Now, the other day when we were talking, you said, you was telling me that, I think probably this was after your mother passed away, that he would get up in the middle of the night and chalk up the fires, and he would get the Cure Journal out and he would read it. And yeah, and that at this particular time that, and I'm thinking that maybe this was around the Depression time, that he had invested $25,000 in this tie company.
Yeah, he and his partner, they lost $25,000 in tie and timber company in Wyoming.
Okay. And you would say he would read the paper and he would say what to himself? Well, I guess it happened. It's going to be all right or something?
No, he'd chunk up the fire and he'd say, they'd hear the paper and he'd say, all well, and then he'd go brush off his feet like people did that didn't have house shoes.
Yeah.
And brush off the bottoms of his feet and go back to bed for a while.
Yeah. So was that when he lost this money, was that back about the Depression time?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, in that area there?
Before a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's one thing about the Kinsers, that the family and everything, they could just take anything and it seemed like it would just roll off of their shoulders. And the other day I was talking to Johnny Webb and we were talking about their demeanor, the Kinsers' demeanor, especially the women and the men too. Just about how everything was so easy going by. And I said, you know, the women, the Kinser women had that trait about them. And he said, yes. And he said, every now and then, said, oh, look at Glenna. And I said, I wish you had a little more of your mama's trait in you instead of the Cassidy's. So, Glenna, I don't know where you're at, but, all right. That's what your husband told me the other day. So you need to do a little better. You need to do a little better. Talking about growing up there, of course, after your mother died, I guess you was like a mother to a lot of these that were after you, wasn't it?
Three.
Three?
Lita, Willie, and H.E. And of course, there was 7 of us at home when Mother died.
Okay, and you...
Blanche, she quit school or teaching or whatever she was doing, and she took over and stayed home with us. So she was our mother, but we had to mind too. Yeah,
you had to mind?
Yeah.
What was some of the things, I heard a story one time that Pappy had a couple of sawmills, and one of them was there at the Kinser house. And now for the ones of you that don't know, if you're going out through Cleveland and you turn like you're going to the new school out there, the elementary school, right after you pass the Cleveland church, the white house on the right up there was the Pappy Kinser and Mammy Kinser place. That's where they lived, was right there in that white house. Yeah. And, but I heard a story one time that Willie was aggravating you a little bit, and you took her out to the sawdust pile and dug a hole and buried her. Was there anything to that?
Well, she said I buried her, but I might have got up to the neck.
Okay, you just took her up to the neck. Well, that's pretty good. Well, I heard that you got her up maybe to the neck.
I don't know, I don't think I was that bad.
Well, as long as you kept her,
It was a huge sawdust fire.
yeah, okay. Well, as long as you kept her neck out, that was all right, you know. I also heard one time that Lita, when Lita was real young, that you used to put her in the dish pan, tie a rope on it, and drag her around the yard. Is that true?
Yeah, yes, I did. I
Okay.
don't know, she wasn't very big, but we went a rough ride. We went a rough ride, yeah. But she was, you know, after Mother died, I was her mama.
Yeah.
But I had to do a lot for her, yeah.
Well, good, that's good. At least you didn't bury her, you know. You had to keep her. When you was growing up, I know we was talking the other day, of course, I brought some information about Chameleon Springs over here, the Hotel of the Chameleon Springs and the Cleveland Springs. There's some information over there and some postcards. Back this summer, we signed up, I guess, or whatever, to get a plaque for the Cleveland Springs and Chameleon Springs there, and there is a plaque there at Cleveland, right across from where you turn in to go to Doc and Sarah's place. There's a nice plaque there that's recognizing Cleveland Springs and Chameleon Springs. Now, Chameleon Springs is down in the Sulphur Holler area, and that was the first place, the first meeting that they had for Evanston County to form Evanston County. And so that's one of our historical markers down there. And there was a motel there and a resort, and it talks about it. I brought some of the literature about that. I did not bring the postcard, I forgot it, but there is a picture of the Chameleon Springs, and it was a beautiful motel or hotel, whatever you want to call it. The other day when we were talking, you said that your grandmother was the cook there at Chameleon Springs?
That was, I was told, and I'm sure she was, because we had the old coffee mill that she ground the coffee in.
Yes.
And they always said that that's what she did when she cooked at the old hotel down there, yeah.
And is it true that you used to, that you younger kids used to turn that coffee mill over and ride it?
Yeah, we walked it.
You walked it.
But we had the big wheel, you know, it was
Yeah.
tall, and we would turn it over, and then we'd go all over the place in the house, you know, big old rooms.
I got to see that day before yesterday. She still has that. And what it looks like, I had never seen one that big. It's huge. It sits up about this tall, and it has two great big black wheels on it, and it has a big hopper here on the top, and you put the coffee and stuff in there, and you turn them wheels, and it grinds that coffee.
After my dad got it, back in the years that I was home, he ground chicken feed in it,
Yeah.
the corn with the chicken.
Yeah.
And then later, when I moved to Bowling Green, we had a gravel driveway, and Mike and Danny, my two sons, they put gravel in it and locked it up.
We'll have to get it unlocked.
I tell them that all the time.
Yeah, that brings me up to another question. What year did you get married?
1942.
And who did you marry?
I married Harold Willis.
Was he from Warren County or?
He was from Barron County.
Barron
At
County.
one time, he was living in Warren County, yeah.
And y'all had, how many children did
Two
you?
sons,
What was their names?
Danny and Mike. And
Okay.
Michael, yeah.
One of them lived in North Carolina?
Yeah, Mike lives in North Carolina, and Danny lives in Brentwood, Tennessee.
Okay. So you got married in 19 when?
42.
1942. Good life, wasn't you? You had a good life with him, huh?
Well, I tried to think it was.
Yeah.
We had a good life.
Would you ask her about her honeymoon?
Okay, what about your honeymoon? What was special about your
Oh,
honeymoon?
yeah, I'm sad. I went down, it was the old
Horseshoe Camp.
Horseshoe Camp?
Horseshoe Camp. We passed it a while ago. I had memories.
You don't have memories? Did you have a flashback?
A little.
A little flashback, okay. Well, what about your honeymoon?
Well, that was it.
That was it, okay.
A couple weekends I spent there.
Oh, you spent a couple of
I didn't
weekends
tell
there.
my dad for 2 weeks.
Oh, you didn't tell Pappy Cancer for 2 weeks that you's married?
Yeah.
Well, I would figure with that many kids, he'd be trying to get rid of you, but since you was the cook and everything, he probably wanted to keep you around, huh?
Exactly right. He didn't want me to go.
Didn't want you to go. Now, you were talking about going down to Chameleon Springs being little. Do you remember the motel when it was actually there running?
No,
Huh.
no, I just remember it when it was dilapidated, yeah. But I-
Could you remember when Gertie and John Lindsay lived there?
Their children went to school where I did.
Yeah, at their Cleveland. Well,
John was in our class too.
John was in your class. One of the stories that Uncle Jimmy always told when John and Gertie lived there, that was the first place that he ever got bologna. that John Lindsay brought in bologna, and one of the boys, I don't know if it's Joseph or one of the boys that was the chiropractor, him and Jimmy went to school together, and Jimmy said he spent the night there, and that was the first place that he got bologna. You was always raised around the Cleveland area there. Your dad, what do you know about the Cleveland school area? Did your dad start that?
He gave the ground, and I'm sure that he saw the lumber for the first school,
Yeah.
or maybe the second, when they put the second story on. I don't know for sure, but anyway, he saw the lumber. And we had this big lumber mill, sawmill up there, but the barn where I was raised,
Yeah. Well, I was, through my history and everything and talking to Uncle Jimmy and everything, I think there was 4 rooms to start with there at Cleveland, and then they added 4 more rooms upstairs, and I'm sure that he probably saw the lumber and donated the land for that school.
Yeah, I know he did for the first one, and I'm pretty sure he did.
Of all the kids here, how many of them actually taught school around? Can you think of any of those?
Yeah, you know, family,
Yeah.
Carl, Merle, Mildred, Blanche, Lita taught during the war.
Okay.
One year, I think. Yeah.
So a lot of them were in the school business then. What about the cemetery up there, the Kinser Cemetery? Do you remember when that started?
No, I don't remember when it started, but I remember now it's full.
Yeah, it's getting a little fuller. I drove by before I come tonight, and the name of it, it's right across from the Cleveland Church there, and it's the Kinser Cemetery, and Darrell Cassidy and a bunch. Darrell was sort of in charge of getting this marker put up there, and I'd like to read this to you what the marker says. He went by A.D., but they called him Doff, right?
Yeah, called him Doff.
Doff.
A lot of people did, but
Yeah.
most of them did. He signed his name A.D. off.
Yeah, well, on this plaque, it's got A.D., parentheses, Doff Kinser, who not only donated land for a large portion of the Kinser Cemetery, but was known throughout the community for his generosity to his fellow man. On the plaque there, they had that put up, and what I could find out that he was a very generous man, and he loved his fellow man a lot. He had a good reputation. Now let's move on down to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Motel where Doc Gray and Sarah used to live. Did you do a little work for them one time?
Now, I did a little work out in the field.
Okay.
We picked some blackberries and took them to the back door, and the black cook came and met us out there, and she gave us 50 cents a gallon for them.
For the blackberries?
Yeah, and so she made coppers for the guests.
Okay. Did you ever go there to dance or to any of that?
I remember one time going with my mother and dad. They had a dance, but they weren't dancing.
Yeah.
But they had one, a ball. They called it a ball.
Yeah. Well, this brochure over here, it has it was telling about a ball that they were going to have. So they probably had brawls too, if I had to guess. But so you did go there with your mom and
That's
dad?
one time that I remember that they had one, and I was little.
Uh-huh.
I was little.
So,
Of course, they couldn't leave us at home.
now, yeah, well, no, not that many. Going back a little bit to the one that was contiguous to where y'all live, the Chameleon Springs. The other day, you told me that you had some neighbors that used to take their vacation. Could you tell us a little bit about that when they went to
Their
Chameleon?
names were Corky. There were 3 sisters. They were not widows, but they were single, and their brother lived with them. And back when they were young, they went up there, and they parked at the top of the hill and walked down. And I can't remember whether she said car or wagon.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, she talked about it. They go down there and spend their vacation.
And to get the sulfur water.
Sulfur water, yeah.
Yeah. In this article that we submitted, it said that there was a couple different types of sulfur water there. They had the red sulfur and the black sulfur and all of that. Can you remember people bathing in that and drinking it, or going by and getting it?
I can remember people drinking it,
Yeah.
but that, of course, I was young, but people would go there when there wasn't no hotel.
Yeah.
And get their sulfur water.
Get their water, thought it was good for them, drinking it?
Yeah.
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 You was talking about Pappy Kinser being in the timber business. He loved his trees, didn't he?
Yes, he wouldn't let us get a switch on.
That's what, unless he was pulling them to whip you, right?
No, we had to go one time and get switches, Willie and I did, and so we got them off the pear tree, and you know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
Knotted leaf.
Yeah. Did it hurt?
Yeah, no, one lick's all I got.
One lick, huh? Okay. You was talking the other day, we was talking about, you told me that when you got saved and everything, that you were baptized there at the mill pond.
Absolutely. In October.
In October. For the ones that don't know where the mill pond, it's right on down the creek there from this Chameleon Springs, and just so happened my family owns that now. I'm going to go on record as saying that you're probably the oldest living person baptized in the mill pond.
I get there.
Yeah, I guess you are. You was talking about Pappy. What about the time that he got the new car and he loaded? Can you tell us what type of car it was?
Oh, yeah, it was
Wait, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. And I want you to tell them what y'all were doing. Y'all put them all in the car, all the kids, and he was going to Cleveland School, and you passed the guy. And tell us who it was and what he said to this guy.
Okay, we were nearly, his name was Morris Skaggs.
Morris Skaggs.
And so when we got nearly to the school, Dad had us all piled in this old Dodge. And it had the celluloid windows in the back.
Did they have like curtains over them, or?
Yeah, but I didn't see the ones on the side, but in
Yeah.
the back,
Yeah.
the celluloid. And so he stopped, and the guy was walking, and he was nearly at school, and he said, Morris, Dad stopped, and he said, Morris, I would let you ride, but I don't have room. He said, no, thank you, I'm in a hurry.
So if the one of you that knew Morris Skaggs, he was real fast type walker and everything. There was another story at one time that your dad, when he got I don't know, it could have been the same car or whatever, that he went down to Pine Grove School, and you thought maybe one of the girls were teaching down there, and they let out school, and he took every kid at that particular time in the school a ride in that car. They had never seen a car, so he went down and took them a ride in the car. So that just sort of tells you what kind of a man he was.
Yeah, Mildred taught at Wingfield, and she might have been teaching at Pine Grove. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know which one was teaching down at the time, but they told it.
I think what I'm going to do here, when she says Mildred, most of us knows who she's talking about. That would be Mildred Alexander, that was married to Percy. She taught, matter of fact, I had her in school at Brownsville. Rosemary, did you have her? Liz had her. Mike had her.
Mr. Campbell said, and she taught all three of her children.
And she taught all three. I wish Sue could have been here tonight. She had something to come up. Sue has a lot of good stories about the Kinser girls and everything, what they did when they was growing up. But Mammy and Pappy, or especially Mammy, they said like to travel. And I heard that one time that Mammy wanted just to see the ocean, and her and Pappy took off and drove to Florida just to see the ocean.
And Willie was a week old.
Well, Willie that's Willie Denham. That's John Denham's mother. They drove, I guess, it wasn't the interstate back then. And so they drove all the way to Florida. Willie was a week old.
Now that's what they said.
Yeah, and I have seen a picture of them sitting on a houseboat, and it was supposed to have been Willie. At one time, Pappy and Mammy supposedly had a houseboat somewhere in Georgia also. But Mammy liked to travel, and Pappy would load them up, and he would take off with them. While they were there in Florida, did they bring back something and give all you kids?
Those shells, yeah. And I got one. There's just several of them.
Yeah, the big seashells,
Yeah,
right?
seashells.
John Denham told
They
me,
brought back some sand.
and
too.
some sand. John Denham told me yesterday that he still had Willie's shell, and Sue Sanders has her mother's shell. So Pappy and them brought all these shells back. I don't know how the car helped 15 shells, but he brought all these shells back. So they were travelers back then. They liked to travel a lot, didn't they?
Yeah, now I was told they stayed a week. Yeah, I mean, they stayed a month. But anyway, I was told that Willie was a week old when they went. I didn't get to go.
Okay. But I have seen a picture of that, of Willie, Mammy holding Willie on the houseboat there in Georgia. So it could have been in that same time era that they were doing that.
And then they had this, what you call a yacht down there. It was down by Arnold's. They had friends that they'd go down there and picnic and swim. And my dad, I never will forget, that he was just jumping off the boat in that big old long bathing suit,
Yeah.
Just scared me to death. So I go back up to the house, and the lady was churning, and so she took the dash out and turned the lid over and said, "Here, you can have some of this." She was settling me down. Yeah, but anyway.
Talking about Pappy Kinser, he was a timber man, and I've also seen a picture of this back. I think this was probably before you was born. He was on this side of the river, and there was a company on the other side of the river, and they would log, and they would bring their logs down to Green River, and they would put a mark in the end of the logs, like the K for the Kinsers and whatever the other. Yeah, this was floating timber. Yeah, these were logs. And then when the rise would come up, they would cut those logs loose, and they would make a shanty out in front like a V, and there was like a little house there, and these young boys around here would float these logs all the way to Evansville, to the mill. And then the picture that I saw, Rum Houchins was about 13 years old, and he was one of the boys on front of these logs that they floated down. Then after that, when he got into this timber and tie business, he would put the S in there, wouldn't he? They would saw the logs out, the ties, and then they would ship them on barges.
That's where he graded them.
That's where he graded them. That's where he got into this timber business. And what was the company, Wyoming Timber and Tie?
One of them was.
Yeah.
He worked for different companies, I think, but that was the main one.
Yes. So he had been in the lumber business for years, and he owned quite a bit of land. And Mary Alice was telling me, Mama Houch, her mother, which would be my grandmother, Mike's grandmother, Mary Alice, didn't you say that Pappy sent her and Papa Houch and about 4 or 5 kids to Allen County to work and cut timber over there?
mom and dad and 4 kids, and then Tommy was the 5th one, and he was born in Alabama. And, yeah, he worked over there in the timber.
What was you saying about Mama House? Said that he would be out late at night and she would put the door and all those kids in the bed and push them up against the door. They had no light.
She put all 5 kids to the bed with her. And she would push the bed up against the door. She was scared.
Yeah. So, but Pappy, he was a man that evidently did quite well in his time in the timber business and everything. What about, they always told me that you was pretty musical, that you liked to sing and dance when you was growing up. And what about the Booker boys coming over there, and what would y'all do when this was when Mammy was done, passed away, wasn't he? And y'all was at home?
We was all in school, you know.
Yeah.
High school, yes, grade school too, but anyway, Rupert Spillman and Kirby Booker, and they could play guitar, you know, and
Yeah.
different ones, but anyway, they come over, and then we invite a bunch to come in, we danced.
Yeah.
And we had no Victrola that you crank too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, my dad, we tell him it was just a five party. So then he'd come in every once in a while and chunk up the fire and check on us, see if we was okay.
But y'all used to play the guitar a lot, didn't you? I think.
My mother played the guitar.
Yeah, I've got a story about that in a minute I'm going to ask you. But Lita used to play a guitar too, didn't she?
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think Lita played, didn't she, Liz?
I don't know that.
Well, I'll tell you the reason I say that was
Holding out on us.
there was a picture. What was the lady? Mary Alice, help me here.
Montello Booker.
Yeah, Vontella
Well, they were
Booker.
best friends.
They at her funeral, somebody had a picture, and your mama had the guitar, and it was up there, and she had that long curly hair and everything, and they said that she used to play, and Dad used to play.
Stories we don't know.
Well, I'm going to enlighten you a little bit, so maybe you need to do a little research here. But you're talking about Mammy playing. Sue told me that, and I wish she was here, she could probably call the person's name, but I can't remember. But there was somebody come to visit Mammy and Pappy, and he brought an old guitar with him.
My Uncle Clay.
That's who she said, it was Clayton. And said that he got right up next to Mammy and Pappy's bed and he thumped on that old guitar all night and kept them awake. Being the mild-mannered guy and everything, Pappy wouldn't say anything to him. So the next night, they said when Clayton went to bed, Mammy got the guitar and said she thumped on it all night, and said Clayton got up the next morning and said, "I've got to go." And I think Pappy's favorite saying was, "What's your hurry?" And he said, "I've got to go, I've got to get some rest." And said Pappy was just chuckling, said that Mammy had played the guitar and kept him up all night.
Well, my dad had a cousin that lived in Oklahoma, and so he came. He hadn't seen him in 40 years, and so my neighbor, Mr. Cowles, came and they set up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and Mr. Cowles said, "Well, I guess I better go home." And Dad said, "What's your hurry?"
Yeah, he liked to visit, didn't he? He liked to like people being around him. You know, he's talking about your dad and mom. Now, your mom, you said she was a Johnson, right?
Yeah.
And she was from down in the Oak Hill area.
Yeah, I think, that's in there somewhere.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of Johnsons there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, do you have anything else that you would like to share with us?
For you, I could share a lot, but anyway, you're helping me.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a minute, I'm going to ask everybody that is kin to her to stand up, and before we leave, I would like for all of us to get with her and take a picture with her. But right now, I want everybody that's blood kin to her through some way, just stand up right now. That ought to be something right there for you. Yeah.
I just want to say how remarkable Ann Lois really is. I had a little illness back a few months ago, and she called me one day and said, I want you to send Richard's my husband, she said, I want you to send Richard over. I've cooked your lunch. Now remember, she's 98 years old. So Richard comes back in about 30 minutes, and there's a picnic basket with a little check tablecloth all covered. I open that bag, and there's fried chicken, green beans, broccoli, coleslaw, cornbread, peach cobbler. I'm leaving some things out. I think she is absolutely remarkable. I go over to see her, and about half the time she's not there. She's out in her car, driving around. She still drives. She goes and buys her own groceries and remains independent. And we love her. We're very, very proud of her.
Yeah, I just thought of something I want that lived around the home place there when you were growing up, some of the families.
Well, there was a lot of them that I faintly remember.
Yeah.
But there was Bookers.
The Bookers,
And they lived in the Dunns,
the Dunns,
the Cassidys.
Cassidys.
Yeah, and the Baileys.
Baileys,
And the Catons.
Catons.
And then Mr. Caton, the older Mr. Caton, was the superintendent of the schools for years,
Yeah.
you know.
What about Deweese's? Was there some
Yeah, the Deweeses, they were closer to the store.
Yeah, and then the Gentrys,
Yeah, I didn't know the Gentry
Yeah.
too well.
and then probably the Winkfields. Some of the Winkfields lived there around
Oh,
in that
yeah,
area there.
Yeah, and they had this invalid old fellow that lived with the Wingfield, that he was in bed for years, and he would wave at everybody that went by.
What was his name?
I can't think of his name, but well. there's
I've
one-
heard it called, but I can't think of it either.
Well, there was one named John Mackey, they called him,
Yeah.
but he was retarded,
Yeah.
yeah, but cut wood all the time, yeah.
What was you guys?
I was asking her if she remembered the shows.
Do you remember any of the black families that lived up on top of the hill, the Shobes, any of them?
Well, we, back when, after mother died, my dad wouldn't let us render lard when they killed hogs, and so he'd go get, I call it, wasn't Aunt Dolly, it was another one.
Aunt-
He'd bring her down on a horse.
They had a church and a school out there, did they not?
Uh-huh.
I think they had a church and a school somewhere out there, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a church,
Yeah.
because a lot of the whites used to go to their meetings, yeah. And I've heard my sister Blanche and Paul talk about going up there too, yeah. But anyway, they were sweet people, yeah, yeah.
The Kinser girls, they're all referred to them as growing up would be the Kinser girls. And if you notice how pretty her skin is and everything, I've decided I'm gonna get her secret. And I'm gonna put out this beauty line, this beauty lotion. Aunt Lois's beauty lotion. I'll get rich off of it because all the Kinser girls were pretty girls. Now I can't say much for the
But I got
men.
more moles than any of them.
Well, that's all right. But I'm gonna read the names here a little bit over again, and I'm going, and a lot of you, I'm gonna try to tell, and I had maybe ask Mary Alice and Liz and some others to help me a little bit here. But Gertie was the oldest, and that was Mary Alice's mother. And then,
Let me say something.
yeah, go ahead.
Derby.
Okay, go ahead.
They lived close to us. We grew up together, and we played together. And Virgie was 4 months older than me, but anyway, we were there. And Gertie would can this big half-a-gallon cans of everything to feed the family, yeah. So, but anyway, we were together a lot. And but one thing I remember and I love, Gertie took them all to Sunday school.
Yeah.
And Mary Alice didn't know this, but I remember that she'd get them all ready, and then when she could get her bath and leave, her hair wouldn't be dry. She'd have to go on before she got her hair dry. But I can remember that.
She used to always have a bonnet on or a hat pulled over at Sunday school. I guess that's the reason why she wore it, huh? Mary Alice wouldn't give her enough time to get ready. See, Mary Alice, what was there, 9 of y'all?
Yeah.
So Mama House, she had 9. And then there was Carl Kinser. Carl lived there in the home place, and he married Delta Mitchell, who was out in Mitchell's sister. And Pam here, Pam, hold your hand up. Pam's dad, Mitchell, was Carl and Delta's son, and that's his daughter. Then we had Grace, which is Arnold D. right here. That's his mother. And then we had John Kinser.
They're deceased.
Yeah, and then Myrtle. Now Myrtle, I went out to the graveyard today. I never did know much about her, but it said Myrtle Eva, and she was born in 1904, and she died in 1931. Was she ever married or anything?
No, she wasn't married, but she taught school.
Yeah.
Over there on Dripping Springs at Woolsey, they used to call it.
Woolsey?
They were the black
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she taught school there until she got sick. But she fell in the river and injured her back with her lung. And that's how come she lived for 3 years. Yeah, she's 27.
27 when she died? Okay. Then we had Miss Mildred Alexander, who was married to Percy. She was a sister. Then we had Blanche, who was married to Rip Wakefield. And Blanche, if you ever went to Bowling Green, and that's before the mall was big, Blanche worked for 100 years at Dollar Brothers. If you went in...
National store.
Huh?
And the National
And National Store, okay. She worked at Dollar Brothers and the National Store. And then we had Paul. Okay, was he the one, Mike, that lived at Smiths Grove, or do you know? Louisville, okay. Then we had Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher died before I was born.
Okay. How old was he before he passed away?
He's about a year, I think. I looked back the other day, but I forgot.
Okay.
What was wrong with him, Aunt Lois? Did he?
What was wrong with Christopher?
I don't know. He was just about a year old, I think.
Mom said he had sleeping sickness. Whatever that was.
Sleeping sickness. Mama had.
I've always heard that, too.
Then we have Connor Kinser, who was married to Esteline Parker. Y'all remember Connor? I'll tell you a little story about Connor that Sue told me. When he was in the service, he run into a guy by the name of Capto. This guy was from Louisville, and him and Connor went into service together, and they was through the service, and they were big buddies. And after they got out of the service, they called a bus somewhere down on 31W and got off, and they walked up to Pappy's house. And they got there about 2 o'clock in the morning, and Pappy got them all up, got the girls up, and they said he went to the smokehouse and got a country ham and everything and started cooking breakfast. I had these girls, and Sue said she run into this guy named Capto, at a funeral later on, and he was telling Sue about that. He said that was the best breakfast that he had ever had, and he said he could remember this day about all those girls getting up and cooking that breakfast for him when they got back from the service, about 2 o'clock in the morning. Then we had Howard Kinser.
He had 3.
Yeah, he was married to Imogene. Vincent, yeah, Imogene. And then we have then we had Howard, then we have Aunt Lois, and she was married and had 2 sons. Then we had Willie Denham, who was married to Noel Denham, and they had a son named John. And then we have Henry, or H.E., we called him, and he never did marry, but he lived with Blanche until he passed away. And then we have Lita, who was the baby that was married to Glenn Cassidy. She was the baby. Did y'all spoil her a lot?
Yes, she wouldn't have nothing to do with nobody but me.
Well, they told me that she was attached to your hip, that you carried her around a lot.
That's what ruined me.
That's what took you over the hill, huh? Well, go ahead.
We had, back to Mary Alice and Arnold Lee, I spent time with them too, but I went to Arnold Lee's dad and picked strawberries. And when I got my money, I got me a permanent. I got me a permanent, and I still got that picture. Mary Alice, she wasn't along, but Virgil and June and all of us on Sunday afternoon, we go, all we could do is go down that valley there in front of the house and go over there and find the walnut trees and sit down and eat walnuts all Sunday afternoon.
So that's all you could do,
Back
huh?
with brown lips.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a good time.
Wasn't a whole lot to do back then, was
And then we
it?
had two horses, well, one was a mare and a horse. One was named Callie and Boone, and that's what we did. That was our mode of travel. We rode the horses to the grocery and everywhere else that we could. And I loved horses, yeah. So when Blanche was teaching up at the Cole, I call it Cole up there, she rode, the old Boone is getting old and he'd fall down on the frozen ground, you know.
Yeah.
And so she picked up this little boy every day and let him ride behind her. And old Boone would fall and down they'd go. Get up, get back on, and go on.
Yeah.
She'd hitch a horse up there all day, you know, so hitch it till he could
Get back home?
get back on, yeah.
Does anybody have anything they would like to ask Aunt Lois? Yeah.
Do you remember the cousin's name that lived in Oklahoma?
Garner,
Garner? Last name?
but no, his last name was Garner.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember the first name. But he married part Indian girl. They came and stayed a week at my dad's house, and they had a good time. No wonder they sat up all night. He hadn't seen him for 40 years, and so, but.
Well, the reason I asked, my great-great-grandfather's sister's daughter was married to Charles E. Houghton. And I think her name maybe was Margaret Ellen, I've forgotten her name.
Married to who? I didn't know.
Charles E. Houghton.
Charles E. Houchins.
Anyway, her brothers, 2 or 3 of them, moved to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures of several of those family members from relatives, distant relatives out there. And I just wondered if they were connected somehow.
Well, I couldn't tell you, but it might have been. Yeah. But anyway,
If y'all want to see what the Kensers girls looked like when they were growing up, Donna, stand up. Right there. That there's what, huh? Yeah, stand up, Donna. That there's what the Kenser girls look like right there. Yeah. They all, yeah, that's what they looked like. They were pretty girls. The ones that of course, I can remember most of them. Of course, some of them was deceased, but they, Arnold D's mother and John's mother was more dark complected than the rest of the girls, and then the rest of them, Miss Mildred and all them, they were like her, sort of light color hair and everything, but they were real tall and slim, and you took that after Pappy, I'm sure. And then, of course, Mammy Kinter, being the Johnson descent, she was more darker color and had more darker color about her. But Donna reminds me a whole lot of when Miss Mildred and you and all of y'all were growing up or younger when I was just a kid. But does anybody else have anything?
If you want to know what Pappy looked like, Arlie, you stand there.
Yeah, yeah, right there is what Pappy looked like, yeah. And I do have, we did, if you look at these pictures.
does look like
I
Yeah,
had
indeed.
lots of them, but I didn't.
And then this is Mamie here, but she had some good pictures of one that I wanted her to bring. She was standing on this dirt pile.
That was we called it the cellar. We built, my dad does a storm hole.
Okay, a storm hole.
Yeah, I knew it had a dirt floor though.
Yeah, but they was all her and Carl. No, it was her and Connor, Howard, and Lita, and Willie was all in this. Y'all was barefoot and had dirt all over you.
Yeah, we've been digging the dirt.
Yeah, that's one I wish that she had brought, but she has some great pictures and everything. Does anybody else got anything they want to?
Jeff, I was gonna ask Lois, Mama said one of your brothers had rigged a way to bring water from the spring up to the house. Do you remember about that?
When everybody, there was several lived in, where my dad built a house with my grandma and grandpa.
Is that called the starter house? Is that the starter house after you?
No, it was called Honeymoon Cottage.
Honeymoon cottage, okay.
But out of the family, let's see, Carl and Delta and Gertie and Hats lived there with my grandma, just till he was moving from over in Allen County, I think. And then there was Blanche and Rip, Lita and Glenn, Willie and Noel, Howard and Angie, and let's see, I forget, a bunch of them.
Yeah.
About 7 of them. They all lived in that little house.
Yeah.
And we called it the Honeymoon Cottage, you know. They'd stay there a while now.
Then
But
go
one
on.
time when Mildred Percy was there, Carl had built a windlass to pull the water from the spring, and that's where we washed the clothes. And we'd go down there and stay all day and wash the clothes and boil them and take them back up the hill and hang them on barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
But anyway, Percy sat down to get some water, and they sent us some jelly biscuits. And so we took those out, we filled up the bucket with rocks and sent it back. We bored.
Yeah.
He hollered down there, "What's going on down there?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Send it back, we'll get you some more."
To answer your question, Mike might have remembered too, when Carl had that platform behind the house and they had that rope going over and had that, he had a wheel
With a crank on it.
and the crank on it, and they would crank that bucket down to the spring house, and then they would crank it back up
Yeah.
to bring the water. But that's probably what you're referring to, because
Yeah.
I can remember that.
Yeah.
I know Mary Alice probably does too. Does there anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
When we were growing up, and Pam lives in the house that belonged to Pappy Kinser. And when we were growing up, we would go to Pappy's, and all the other girls, Patsy and Sue, Mary Jo, all the other girls near my age were allowed to go upstairs. And I'm 74 years old and I've still not been upstairs. I wasn't allowed to go upstairs.
You're not missing anything.
No, I can remember when being a kid, you know, we'd go up there to the house and I'd give anything to get to go upstairs, but I never did go upstairs.
You and Mary Alice have something back wrong, y'all.
Back when I lived there, when we was all young, the steps had a landing. And there by the landing, there'd be barrels of flour and well, for a lard can, I'd call them.
Lard cans,
A
yeah.
lard can full of molasses and shortening too, yeah. That's where he stored stuff, right at the top of that landing.
Well, it took a lot to feed 15 kids back
Oh,
then.
yeah, he killed lots of hogs there. We raised what we had.
Yeah,
Everybody else did too.
yeah.
Didn't you say there was a lot of shoes up there?
Huh?
Didn't you say there were a bunch of shoes upstairs?
Shoes, was there a bunch
Oh,
of,
yeah, we had a back room, and people used to come, that didn't have many shoes, and they'd go through them and get them some shoes, yeah.
give the people in the community
Yeah,
shoes?
And when I was a little girl, we had one family that lived out, and my mother would send me with a gallon of milk with a big hunk of butter out through the field and go through the woods and take it to them. They were sick, and I wasn't afraid then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Does anybody else have anything? Well, let me say, I am really tickled that you took the time to come up here today and share your history and your life with us. It means a lot to a lot of people, especially us.
I told you half of it.
Well, maybe we'll have to hit you again then.
But I was shocked, but I didn't know it was coming over here. I
Yeah, no, we're glad.
Secret.
Yeah, well, I knew if I told you everything, you might not come, so I just told you enough to bait you up a little bit. But you're a remarkable woman, and I appreciate you coming. I know everybody here does. And before we leave, everyone that is kin to her, before we leave tonight, we'd like to get a picture with her, okay?
Jim, I have a question.
Okay. Sheila has a question.
Aunt Lois, what did you all, before you got married and you all courted, what did y'all do?
Well,
Well, anybody that takes
This is before the honeymoon, 2 weekends of the honeymoon.
they had cars. You get a gallon of gas for about 20 cents, you know, and we'd go up to Crossroads and get a quarter hamburger, or down in Bowling Green, they had down on College Street, they had a place that they sold eats, and they had ham steaks. And boy,
Yeah.
but anyway, we rode around. The day Pearl Harbor was attacked, I was going down the 31W with my husband now, I mean, later. But then we were going to a movie, yeah.
When Pearl Harbor was
Pearl
born.
Harbor.
And you was born on Pearl Harbor Day, wasn't you?
Yeah, born
Yeah.
7th of December.
19 and 18.
Yes.
When you go out to get your driver's license and they ask you your age, what's their response when you tell them 19 and 18?
I just say I'm old.
You're old. They ever question you any on
They
that?
look at me and smile.
Well, they need to smile.
Oh, but
Does anybody else have anything? Again, we're glad, Aunt Lois, that you come and shared this with us, and I hope in about 2 more years we can have you back for the big 100.
I'll tell you the rest of it.
Okay, you tell us the rest of it.
You haven't heard half.
Okay.